Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Passive Investing Show. I'm Ashley Wilson, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Jay Scott. And on today's episode, we are interviewing Don Spafford. Don has a background in finance and securities investing, and then later transitioned into real estate investing. Specifically, he has built a RV portfolio. Pretty interesting. What do you think, Jay?
Yeah, he buys and invests in RV parks. He syndicates those investments, which means he basically makes investments available to passive investors like you and me. And on this episode, we're talking all about how RV park investments work. So what is an RV park? For those who don't know, we talk about that. And honestly, as I talk about on this episode, I had no idea until a year ago. We talk all about how the income and the expenses shake out for RV parks, what you can do as a park owner to set yourself apart. So what your operators may be doing to set themselves apart from other operators, what the returns look like, and basically everything you need to know if you're considering making an investment into an RV park. Fantastic episode today, and Don's a great guy.
Don is a great guy. It was clear to me, and I'm guessing it was clear to you. He's pretty passionate about RV parks. He invests a lot of parks local to where he lives, and that's kind of how he stumbled into it. But you can learn more in just a little bit as we bring him on, and he tells you all about his journey with investing in RV parks, and you can too. So stay tuned to the end of the episode where you can find out how you can get in contact with Don, and also how you can watch more episodes on passive investing at thepassiveinvestingshow.com.
Absolutely. So without any further ado, let's welcome Don Spafford to the show.
Don, welcome to the Passive Investing Show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
We're thrilled to have you here. We really appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Well, it's an honor for me to be on one of your, first episodes.
We're really excited to have you on, and we were wondering if you can start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and how you landed it with RV parks.
Yeah, sure. I'd be lying if I said that I did this intentionally. It was all happened just organically as I moved and progressed through real estate investing, as I'm sure both of you have. I've heard your stories in the past. I started out buying fourplexes, knowing that I wanted to get into some type of multifamily early on. So I bought fourplexes, and then I had planned to continue scaling with that. And then just after I saved my third fourplex, I got into some other commercial opportunities. Some new development and land flipping, and then some build to rent, ground up development of multifamily, and then just in pursuit of trying to find more value add multifamily deals, I came across RV campgrounds. So I live in eastern Idaho, very close to Yellowstone Park. So it's a very high camping area. All my neighbors have RVs and campers, and it's a whole lifestyle here. And I heard about campgrounds on a podcast, I think last summer. And that's really what got me thinking about that and looking more into it. And I started attending webinars and going to meetups with people in that space, and reaching out to them and trying to just connect with people in doing that and learn more about it. And then I met a couple guys that had just bought their first one, and we discussed their goals and my goals and what we're looking to do, and then so they essentially invited me to join up with them, and now we're here with Happy Camper Capital, and we now syndicate RV campgrounds.
That's awesome. And if we could just back up one step, for our listeners who don't know what an RV campground is, can you just start from the basics?
Yeah, for sure. So there's obviously a big misconception when you even say that. Most people in their mind, they think mobile home parks, for example, and it's nothing like that at all. And there's also not the side of the road, off the highway place, just pull over and park and sleep and head out the next day. That's not it either. These are more like full-on resort style destination campsites. You're going with your RV, your camper, and you're going there to maybe spend a weekend or a week or a month or whatever, just to be there and have fun and enjoy being outdoors with your friends and family, but still have a privacy of your own space with your camper or RV. On our campgrounds, of course, there are still other cabins and other short-term rental type glamping experiences that people can come and do. So we don't have an RV or camper doesn't mean you can't still go out and go there. But these places have, for example, have swimming pools and activities, things going on. So you're there, to have fun, not just to, cook s'mores or something.
Yeah, it's funny. Before COVID, I'm a big city kind of guy. I've grown up. I've lived in Baltimore. I've lived in San Francisco. I've lived in Atlanta. So I never really had much experience with RV parks. And then COVID came along, and a good friend of mine bought an RV, and they started disappearing every weekend. Literally every weekend, they'd leave Friday night, they'd come back Sunday night, and one day I said, like, "Where are you guys going? What are you doing?" And there's an RV park about 45, 50 minutes from where I live, and literally every weekend they'll go. They've got their own spot at the RV park. I think they rent, although I guess you can also buy spots, and I guess we can talk about that. But they've made friends there. There's amenities there. There's like you said, there's some people that do the glamping. There's some people that do the RV park, and so it's really a kind of a resort destination to an extent for them. And so it was interesting. I have a feeling that with COVID, and again, we can talk about this, I have a feeling with COVID, the whole RV park experience has probably kind of come into the foreground for a lot of people who may never have known what it was before.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I grew up in a small town in Nebraska, just north of Omaha. And, even back then in, say, the early 90s, there was a couple of these campsites, marinas there that people were going to all the time. And I'd hear about it in school. I'm like, what is this place? I thought it was like some kind of bar or something. And then later found out it's like this marina campground place where people just go and have fun. And yeah, these have been around for obviously forever. But like I said, they've kind of become more, I think with COVID stuff, it definitely pushed things forward for sure. As people can't go travel other places, like even my case, my family had planned an international trip in 2020 and we had to cancel that. So if people can't take trips, they can't go out to, wherever they want to go for a vacation. Well, the next best thing is something here somewhat close by within, maybe a couple of hour drives where you live, and you can still be there and be outdoors, but, have fun and hang out with people and have that interaction that you can't really get other places.
So from an investment standpoint, what is it that attracted you or attracts you to RV parks versus mobile home parks or multifamily or self-storage or something that's more, I guess, traditional commercial real estate? What is it that you really like about RV parks?
Yeah, well, there's multiple aspects of it. I mean, from the purely, say, investment side of it, is just two things, I guess. One is there's right now anyway a lot less competition, so we're not competing against 20 other offers to have to way overpay for something to get it. So we can keep our purchase price at a reasonable level to produce those better incomes for the returns. And then two is that, it's something unique and different that, other people aren't doing really. So it stands out. So if I go to a meetup and I'm with other multifamily investors, for example, they're sharing their deals here and there, A, B, C, and D. They're all pretty much about the same. Nothing really stands out. And I can say, hey, I've got campgrounds. And they're like, oh, what's that? So it's something different that people aren't familiar with. And then I get to tell them about the returns they're getting. That they're like, wow, that's amazing.
So I definitely want to jump into the returns, but beforehand, just again for those who may not be familiar, like again, 2 years ago I would have known nothing about RV parks. Can you talk to us a little bit about what encompasses a park? What's the typical size? Is it 10 RV spaces or 500 RV spaces? What's like the infrastructure look like? So obviously you probably have water and electric. What else do you need in terms of infrastructure? What is the real estate part of an RV park actually encompass?
Yeah, sure. So for what we're doing with Happy Camper Capital, we're looking at larger sizes. So we're talking about at least 100 or so pad sites and up. Many of these places have been mom and pop owned like for generations, we'll say, decades. Anywhere from small sizes to large sizes. They've only recently in the last few years become more institutional with larger investment companies buying them. So yeah, you can get them in any size really if you want to get started small and I've seen some for, like I said, around that probably at 10, 20 space campsites. But those are just going to be quite a bit more, I'd say, labor intensive for you as the owner to operate that. But for what we're doing at our scale, of course, we're going to have on-site campsite managers and staff there to run everything. We have our own internal management company as well that oversees all of that. But as far as like you said, the real estate goes, we're talking about of course many acres. First of all, which is the land, but there's going to be all these pad sites, like you said, are going to have electric and water sewer connections. That's obviously a necessity to have that there for everybody. And then beyond that, there's going to be, all depends on the location and what's there and what's going on. We purchase across the country, so each location is going to be unique in its own way with different amenities. Some locals could have swimming pools or even water parks. Um, a lot of these places do like the one in Nebraska that I grew up next to. They do like almost like every weekend like a concert event, and people come and hang out and have fun, party, even if you're not there camping. So we got some of those that we're looking to putting in some like weekend concert events, or even just summer events, whatever it may be. If there's water features like a river, lake, pond, something there, we could look at some type of like paddleboard rentals or ski jet, or what do you call them, jet skis. Anything you do in water, you can incorporate that in one way or another to have people rent things to have fun there. So the actual building structures are usually not a lot. You might have a convenience store, a restaurant, or something else on site, but it's mostly going to be all the land with just those site connections. Almost if you think of like a mobile home park without all the mobile homes.
So diving into the real estate just a bit further, what does the zoning look like? You mentioned that you're buying properties throughout the country. What current zoning, or have you done any zoning conversion so that you can make it a mobile home park, or RV park?
So far we are buying existing properties. So the zoning's already been done for them. We don't have to change anything. Usually the only type of approval we need to get in most cases is to add on more, because we obviously want to expand these out. Again, we're buying value add, not just turnkey and keep it running as is. We're buying ones that we can improve on, either improve their systems, the location itself, and in most cases expand as well and add on more sites. So a lot of zoning is basically already taken care of for us. We're not doing any ground up new development of them just yet. We do have that in the plans probably in the next couple years, but for right now we're just pursuing the existing and making them better.
Switching topics a little bit and looking more at the economics, you're talking about buying value add RV parks, and with respect to pursuing value add, what does the timeline look like? The cost of making those improvements? Is it a management play? Is it more the aesthetics of the park? What are you tackling when you say that you are doing value add RV investments?
There's multiple aspects to it. So it's not, it's, most people are familiar with multifamily, obviously, and so it's not quite as simple as going in and, replacing the flooring and painting new appliances. That's pretty simple. We're multifaceted, I'd say. The number one thing for most of these places is just getting them a better online presence. So we can, with our management company, go in and improve the website, make it so it's even people can find it. And include online reservations with dynamic pricing. Many of these places, again, are mom and pop owned. They may have a website, usually not that great, and they generally would only take like phone call reservations. So they keep the same price every day of the week, every month of the year. So when somebody calls and says, how much is it? They'll say, is this much per night? So we're improving that process right there just to get more people to come there. If they can find us online and get there with the online reservation, it makes it much simpler. So that alone generally adds on at least another 5% revenue. Then of course the streamline of the management itself, again, being a mom and pop place, usually the owners are also the operators. They're doing the job of like 6 people usually. So they're, spread thin for sure. So we want to put in the full on staff there, of course, with the campsite manager and sufficient staff to handle all the needs and activities going on to make sure all the people are taken care of and everything runs smoothly. And then of course, just from there, it's going to be, like I was talking about before, all the amenities. If that be adding on a convenience store or something, if it's not already existing, or adding on other features that people want to see and need, like clean bathrooms and good strong Wi-Fi. As we talked about earlier with the pandemic, part of the reason why I think we've seen an increase in the usage of these places is people can work remotely now more than they could before. And so, for example, somebody that doesn't have responsibilities, like I say children or something that keeps them tied down to certain locations, like if they have the opportunity now to work wherever, it's like they may not want to be tied down to one place, and can travel and work someplace and live someplace new every week, month, and be on the road. So they want, of course, therefore a good Wi-Fi to be able to do their work and or podcasts or or whatever they do, these RV life YouTube people. And then from there, it's just kind of whatever else makes sense to do for the site. Like I said, we had one earlier in Florida that we were working on, that we were looking to add on a full-on water park as part of the campsite itself. In some cases, it's something else simple, like adding on some additional, like a RV storage, or just expansion. Like I said, add in more pad sites. In some cases, they may also have include a marina as well. So we look at how we can make their marina better. Would that be, of course, adding on more docks or other improvements just to make it better with things that people need there. Another big thing right now, we're on most of the ones we acquire, we're improving the connections. So again, all these sites already have a electrical, water, sewer connections, but as we know, many more electric vehicles are starting to come on the market. People are getting electric trucks and even electric RVs now, and so the standard, connections that are on site there won't be able to handle that. So as we're making these improvements, we're just already push them up to beyond what's required now to be ready for all those electric vehicles as they come through. So again, if somebody's looking online, they'll say, hey, where can I plug in my electric truck? It's like, oh, this place has it. So they'll come to us versus the one down the road. So again, it's kind of just multifaceted of different things that we do to change the management, the softwares, the amenities available, and just kind of everything. There's a lot of steps involved.
I find it's really interesting. So Ashley and I obviously come from the multifamily space where the vast majority of our income comes from monthly rent. And then we work really hard to figure out what are those additional income streams that we can implement to supplement the monthly rent. But at the end of the day, I mean, that might be 2% or 5%, or if we do a really good job, it might be 10% of the total income coming from additional income. Sounds like with RV parks, maybe 10 or 20 years ago, the bulk of the income came from renting the space. But these days, between things like a convenience store or a restaurant or a water park, or all these additional EV parking spaces, it sounds like you might actually be making more money from the quote unquote additional income than you make from the traditional income of renting the space. How does that typically work? When you go to underwrite a deal, how do you look at the income in terms of rental income versus all that other additional income? And how does that compare generally to, let's say, somebody that would rent a hotel room for the night? Can you even think of it in those terms?
So I say that the bulk of the income still does come from the rental of the spaces. But yeah, we also can add on additional income streams just to improve the overall NOI by doing these other things as well. So the way I can compare this to people that try to understand, like, what's the income generation here come from as compared to, like, say, a mobile home park, for example, or even a hotel. But so if you think about it, people that are familiar with real estate, they generally are going to know what's a short-term rental, right? So you got your Airbnb properties that generally are going to have higher income than a standard long-term rental, a similar property. So these RV campsites are basically short-term rentals on a multifamily scale. So with that, when we acquire a property, it kind of depends on how it has been run previously. Like a lot of the places, again, being mom and pop makes them more simplified for them. If they have more long-term renters that are there for, like, say, seasonal or even in some cases almost living there permanently, we try to change that over more to the transient type people that come there. So they're there for a weekend, maybe a month, not there for very long term. And because that transient population is what really brings in the higher revenues. Same as like short-term rental, you got it. People coming in every couple of days, then you're doing greater than maybe somebody that rents it for a full month, they might get a discount. So that's kind of what we're shooting for there with that. And those other amenities, although yes, they bring in some additional revenue on their own, but they're also there to attract people to come there to begin with. So if you're looking at a place to go and stay as you're visiting, say, I don't know, the Disney World or something, and you want to stay in a campsite nearby, you're gonna look for the one that's got the cooler stuff to go do, not just the plain basic one. So even though we may be charging the same price, us versus the one down the road, but we've got this other cool stuff that you can do while you're there too, then we'd be the choice, and using a hotel comparison, it's like saying, okay, do you want to stay at a Motel 6 just to have a place to sleep, or do you want to stay at like Hyatt or something that has nice breakfast and a swimming pool and all this other stuff that you have there?
Yeah, and I guess you also have that big hurdle, which is you have to own an RV.
Well, not necessarily
for some parts.
I mean, so again, with a lot of these places, will have on-site like cabins or other glamping options, like a camper on-site or something else more unique to the property that you can come there and stay at as a traditional short-term rental. So you can just drive there with your Honda Civic and still stay there on-site to have fun with the amenities or the concert, whatever's going on, but also then stay in the on-site cabin or something to make it more unique.
Yeah, and I think that was a really good overview from the income side. Let's jump to the expense side. So obviously, for the additional income, if you're going to have a restaurant or a convenience store, obviously that's going to be its own set of expenses. But for, let's call it the core infrastructure, it sounds like you have the utilities, so electric, water, sewer. You have management. I guess you probably make internet available to all of your guests. What else is involved on the expense side, and what does the typical expense ratio look like? Is it similar to rental real estate at about 50%, or is it a lot lower, a lot higher?
Yeah, so we generally, at least when we're doing initial underwriting, we'll estimate around 50%, because it's around there. You might get some close to 40, some maybe up to 60, kind of depends, varies, but around that 50% range is where we shoot for. And yeah, obviously some of the bigger expenses are going to be the management. We've got not just our typical property manager expense. We've got to pay the property on-site manager, the staff, and then of course you got, like I said, a lot of those utilities, especially. Previously, generally the owner pays all the utility costs. People just come to connect to the water and sewer and electric and just have that included. We, of course, as we're upgrading the systems, we're putting things on there to essentially charge that back. So when they come in, like as soon as they connect to the thing, it will start charging how much they use for electricity. Especially, of course, the electric vehicles, they're going to be using much more than a standard RV or camper. So we want to have that on there. So essentially, when they kind of like when you go to like a parking garage, you get a ticket when you come in, and when you leave, you got to put it in and say you pay for how many hours you've been there. So kind of similar to that. When they'll check in, they'll get connected, then it will link up to an online platform that immediately starts charging for the usage of those utilities. So when they leave, then that's essentially charged to their account. So that's one improvement we're doing to remove some of those expenses from the utilities. For another kind of big one, I guess, is insurance. You wouldn't really think there's a whole lot of insurance for land, but again, it's not. There's more of, I guess, liability insurance. People could come here and drown or get injured if there's a tornado or something could come through. So we want to have that kind of extra protection just for things like that. Not that, of course, in a apartment building, you think maybe there's a fire or a flood or something, but in this case, it's more for that other aspect for protection in case somebody gets injured. And of course, if there is an actual disaster like or the river floods or something, then yeah, we have insurance for the loss of income and things. But yeah, so that's additional cost as well. That's generally probably a little bit higher than most multifamily of a similar type. But yeah, so those are, I think, the big expenses generally are going to be the staffing and utilities.
So looking at cap rates, are the cap rates compressing right now because of COVID, or are they staying relatively stable? What does it look like compared to traditional rental real estate?
Yeah, well, they are compressing. I wouldn't say it's related to COVID necessarily. It's more because there's more people getting into the space now. A couple of years ago, when Happy Camper was first started, when these guys bought their first property, cap rates around then were probably around 12% generally on most of them. Currently, we're probably around in the range of between 8 to 10. It's varying. And again, part of that is there just has not been a whole lot of people getting into this type of property to purchase for investment, other than again, family owner operated type people. So as more competition comes in and more people are buying these at a now institutional level, that alone is what's causing these camp rates to compress some, as of course the prices for them go up.
I can't even believe that you just mentioned a double-digit cap rate. So I am more than excited about this, because in the multifamily space, which Jay and I are both in, it is definitely in the single digits. We're looking at properties that sometimes even have a 2 cap rate. So this is just unbelievable to see 10 to 12 range on the cap rate. So with that, obviously, comes a much stronger return. So in terms of return expectations, what should investors expect on a typical investment?
Yeah, so again, that's going to depend if you're looking to buy it on your own, just to run it and operate yourself. I won't get into those numbers. That's of course going to vary based on a lot of things. For our typical deals that we put out, and we provide deals for both accredited and non-accredited investors. Kind of it varies depending on the property itself, but generally the target we shoot for an LP investor in our deals is between a cash on cash of between 15 to 20%, with a 25% IRR roughly, and which equates out to about a 3x multiple over a 5-year hold. So generally about doubles what most other multifamilies are doing right now.
Wow. Yeah, that's great returns. So you mentioned cash flow, 15 to 20%. You mentioned compounded return of about 20% IRR. You mentioned hold time of about 5 years. I guess the big question I would have, because those numbers obviously are great, where are the risks? So as an investor, what should I be thinking about in terms of where could I potentially lose money, or what could happen that I could potentially not hit these potential returns? What are the risks in this space?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on I guess how you look at it. From my perspective, there's very little risk, but of course I've educated myself enough on this space that I know. But somebody new coming in, looking out and saying, oh, I want to maybe invest in that, but I don't know enough about it. The biggest questions I get asked from people is one about gas prices. As we see that going up, it's like, okay, if gas prices are going up, are people still going out camping? Well, like you mentioned, your neighbors that are out every weekend, yes, they still are going out. They may not take a cross country trip to drive from say Colorado to Florida to go to Disney World, but they'll drive that 2-hour drive or so close by to go to these campsites and still go out and have fun and enjoy being around people. So how we get around that risk is the properties that we target are generally going to be within about a 2 or 3 hour drive of a major population center. A growing city that's not necessarily decreasing. So we have that built-in user base because as of is right now, there are more campers and RVs that are owned by people than there are campsites to hold them all. So if everybody wanted to go out the same weekend, they would not be able to go camping. So there's a huge user base that's built into these, and so if we have that close users that are going to come out there like your friends every weekend, then that's very, very low risk for us. No matter what's going on around the world, people are still want to go out and have fun, and especially people that own campers and RVs, those are expensive toys to have sitting in their driveway if they're not using them. So they're going to go out there and get the most out of it. So that's one risk that people ask that we deal with that location. I guess the only other real risk would be if just something's going on in the world where people just are not going anywhere or doing anything. If it's like a complete total shutdown, not sure to pandemic, maybe some other, we'll think of like a terrorist attack type stuff going on. And of course, and that's completely out of anybody's control on that. But one thing that we look at is if worse comes to worse and whatever happens that people are not camping anymore, if that were to happen, we can easily convert these places into like a long-term stay, so we can totally turn it into just a standard mobile home park or drop in some like tiny homes, cabins, just turn it into like a whole like tiny home community or something. So that's some of our exit strategies that we could do if it, absolutely came to that. But as far as that, I mean, there's really, I'd say very little risk, just because again, we don't have to worry about evictions or eviction moratoriums. People are not there on contracts. They prepay to come. If somebody were to overstay their welcome and not leave when they're supposed to, we can just, call the local police and escort them off for trespassing, so, much easier process with all that. We don't have to worry about, again, replacing carpets and appliances at every turnover. Very little on that regard of it to worry about it being vacant for extended period of time. So yeah, overall, there's really very low risk involved. I guess
sounds like it's pretty recession resistant as well.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. Again, it's and like you said with your neighbors, and I see it with my neighbors as well. They're out all the time. So it's not likely they're going to just all of a sudden stop.
Let me ask. So a lot of LPs, passive investors in real estate investments, also rely on tax advantages. I assume there's probably less tax advantages in this space simply because we're dealing with land versus improvements. But are there any tax advantages or any depreciation that's passed on for maybe some of the other improvements that are made to the sites?
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, yeah, there's no, or say no, but like I said, there's a less above ground improvements for that. Get like the 100% depreciation year one and stuff like that. But yes, there is still depreciation included. And as we do these improvements, for example, we'll see those more in like year two than in year one. Because there's generally not too many structures on site usually. There can be in some cases. We've got some that may have a hotel or some other structures on site for other events, things that they do there. So yeah, there still is depreciation, just not maybe to the extent that somebody's looking for with multifamily. Which, going back to your previous comment about the 2% cap rates, some people are willing to invest in those types of deals that don't care about the returns. All they care about is the depreciation. They're probably not for us. We're more the people that are looking for those higher returns and not caring too much about the depreciation, even though there's still some there.
So could you paint a picture for us of what a typical deal would look like?
Yeah, maybe even go back to a deal that you've done in the past or a deal you're working on. I know we talked before. You don't have any deals available open to investors right now, but what is a deal that you've done in the past, or maybe a deal that you're working on that we may have opportunities in the future?
Yeah, so we've got one we're closing on right now, actually, set to close in a couple weeks, or less than 2 weeks, I guess. And I think we can talk about that one because we're it's not open for investors at this point. And hopefully, if I'm wrong, let me know. But so that one we're I guess I just won't mention where it's at, maybe just to help with that. But so it's one that's it's on a river, so it's got the water there, which is great. We love having water features. It's got about 100 existing pad sites as it is, which we're going to expand that out. And there are some old structures that the previous owners have not just been utilizing. So what we plan to do is, one, remove that structure, which actually we have the owners doing that before we close anyway. We've requested that. And that was going to be, actually, as we look at it, it's going to be a prime location to put like an amphitheater or something to do these like concerts, events. It's got a couple of buildings on site where they used to do like farmers markets or 4-H type events, something like that. So we'll look into doing something like that, continuing. Would that be, some type of big event, or even like say dances or something every weekend or something to attract people. So again, what we're shooting for is not just the people that are there to camp and have that lifestyle, but people that are nearby in the areas that want to come out and just have fun. So we want to attract them for other activities as well. Because as they come there, they might not be paying for the camping site, but they'll still be paying for those other activities that are going on, whether the concert or which involves maybe some liquor sales or something with that. And other family events like dances or 4-H or farmers markets, that kind of stuff. So with this one, guys, we're expanding out all the campsites, adding on more campsite spaces. Adding on some more, we call them glamping pads that are kind of closer to the river, which includes, of course, then some short-term rentals. Having that river there is great, again, for people that want to go fishing and maybe do some like river, what do you call it, inner tube rafting, whatever, on the river. People do those kind of things, have a place to drop them off and pick them up so they can drive them back to the campsite. So yeah, there's multiple different improvements we're going to look at doing, and potentially additional ones that we haven't even thought of yet. As time goes on, we find new things that we haven't thought out before and add those on. So it's like with that, speaking of another one we have one that's in Iowa. It's been operating for about a year now. And that one's in a place where it's kind of more seasonal. Again, we look at different campsites. Some are seasonal, where there are these northern states that maybe close down during winter, and then other ones that are year round, like in Florida or Texas. So the seasonal ones, people ask, what do you do during winter? Do they still produce income? Well, generally, they're going to be producing enough income during the year anyway to make up for that period where they're not. But we still find ways to produce income one or another. That could be some cabins on site that could do some short-term rental. Maybe people come by nearby to go skiing or something. And in the case in Iowa, we had this unique opportunity come up that we didn't even think of. But now we say, okay, this is actually a great idea. I'm sure you guys have seen some of these like drive-through Christmas light displays, right? So we had a local business owner there contact us and ask if he could rent out the campsite and install a drive-through Christmas light display. We're like, hey, that's actually a pretty good idea. I mean, why is that? If we can't use anything else, then at least, yeah, let's do that, and we can share in the profits with him. So there's, like I said, there's almost almost, let's say, unlimited upside in what you can actually do with these places. It's what makes it kind of unique too, as opposed to, again, multifamily. You can only do so much value add before you pretty much are capped out what the market's going to allow the rent for. On these campsites, you can keep doing whatever you can think of to make it better and improve it and add more revenue.
Yeah, I love that. So in terms of, you go in, you're now starting a fund, and you're buying, you mentioned, mostly from like mom and pop type owners who are trying, like you said, they're trying to do 6 jobs themselves. They're probably overworked. They're stressed. So you come in and you kind of, I don't want to say corporatize it, but to some degree you do. You put in place systems and processes, and you really create a good business environment. Who are you selling to? So are you selling to another fund? Are you selling to other mom and pop owners who are looking to come in and take over a stabilized property? Are you selling to institutional investors? Who's your ultimate buyer on the back end?
So on all of our properties, the planned buyer is our sister company, Beyonder Camp, that does the campground management. So we actually intend to buy these from ourselves down the road. Now, at the time, of course, when that time comes to sell, we'll see what's going on in the market. Of course, we'll pay for it at market rates. But if the market is extremely hot for this asset class, as we suspect it probably will be in about 5 years, we are not opposed to putting on the open market and having somebody buy it at, like I say, 2 cap by overpaying for what it they want to get it at. So we are open to selling it on the open market, but the intended buyer, it will be our sister company, Beyonder Camp.
That's great. Now we're nearing the end of the show. We really want to thank you again for your time. But before we sign off, we ask every guest the same 3 questions. So we're going to fire away. I hope you're ready. The first question we ask is, what new thing outside of RV parks have you recently invested in or are currently researching?
Well, I'm not about new thing, but I'm also invested in some ground up build to rent multifamily developments.
Awesome. What states do you like?
I'm in one that's here in Idaho, and one that's going to be coming up in Texas as well.
Awesome. Second question. Is there any current legislation or regulatory environment issues that you feel are putting your investments at risk or could put your investment at risk, whether it's the RV parks or whether it's something else you're investing in? What are you concerned about from a regulatory or government standpoint?
Well, I guess I try to not worry about it too much because it's kind of one of those things out of my control anyway, so I try not to waste the bandwidth on it. But obviously, I'm sure we've all heard is things dealing with like 1031s and even capital gains taxes possibly changing. So yeah, those are some concerns for sure for myself and other people. It's like, obviously those are some of the advantages of investing in real estate. If they remove those, that makes it maybe a little bit less appealing. But at the same time, for someone like myself that's investing more for the income anyway, then it's like, well, whatever, we'll deal with it when we have to. But as long as I'm making the income on it, then that's what matters for now.
And finally, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received that you can share with our audience?
The best.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Yeah. Best piece of advice. Wow, that's.
Or what's something you wish you would have learned a long time ago that would have changed the trajectory of your investing?
That one I can easily answer. This one I do tell everybody, and I learned this also thanks to Bigger Pockets, really. But was about house hacking. Had I known about house hacking when I bought my first property in my early 20s, then I think I'd be in a very, very different position right now. So I've, of course, taught my kids and everybody else that's looking to start in real estate when they're young. I say, hey, you got a house hack. That's the very best way you can get started with very little money and just save that huge living expense and save and invest for more.
Great. So how can our audience get in touch with you?
Probably the best way would be go to our website, happycampercapital.com. We have an About Us tab there, and you'll see my picture and profile there. Click on that, and then at the bottom right corner there'll be a connect with me button that you can schedule time to talk. And then other than that, I'm very active on LinkedIn mostly, so you can find me on LinkedIn, and of course Bigger Pockets. That'd be the best places to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Don, for joining us, and make sure to check Don out at happycamper.com. If you want to hear more about passive investing, make sure to subscribe to your favorite podcast provider and look for the Passive Investing Show. If you would like to check out more content on the Passive Investing Show, you can also check out our YouTube channel. So make sure to like and subscribe at youtube.com/The Passive Investing Show. Thank you again for listening to our audience. And Jay and I hope that this episode helped you continue your journey having your money work hard for you.
Don, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. It's been a pleasure.